Hey guys, this is Paul from Smart Easy DIY. Welcome to episode 21 in my garage build series. Today I'm going to be putting the sheeting up on the roof on the garage, so let's get right into it.
All right, so now the overhangs are done, I'm starting roof sheeting. I actually did that side, most of it. I got most of that side done. So I wanted to kind of go over the steps. So when I'm doing the first run, when I laid this out originally for down on the ground when I was doing the trusses here, I laid it out so that the sheets would land okay. So I made a mark up here where that goes. And then what I like to do is stretch a string nice and tight all the way across to the other end. So I set it up over there on that end the same, and I stretch it really tight. But even so, I double check the middle, so I go in the middle, and I figure in this long of a run, this string could sag an 1/8 inch pretty easy. That doesn't take a whole lot. Even if it's super tight, when it's tipped at an 8/12 like this, it can do an 1/8 inch. And that's what it's off right here on this tail, and I know this overhang's really nice and straight. So that's what I did just to make sure. So I like to use this string for a double check. And then I just snap a line, and I like to break this in half anyway for snapping, so it's not a long of a run to snap, so your chalk line doesn't sag, and also it just kind of makes it a lot nicer to do it in two. So now I'll just take this loose, and while I have my screws in place there, I'm going to go ahead and chalk that. Okay, so I come halfway, hook down there where my string was, just come halfway. So I got a nice line all the way across there. You can see it's nice and bright all the way across. That worked out beautiful. So when I have my screws there, I just hook them on upside down on the screw like that. Instead of hooking it on here, sometimes it can slip a little if you're by yourself. If you already have a screw in place anyway, might as well just use the screw. So now that I got this nice bright line snapped all the way across here. So now that that side over there is nailed all the way up to the peak for sheeting, this is braced pretty good. So I took all the spacers off coming across here, because when I go to put this sheeting on, it'll make it a lot easier to get these spaced exactly where they need to go. So I wouldn't do that unless that was already done. But since that's done, I can do that on this side. So this is my starter piece. I went up and measured it, 92.5. So I just snapped the line. I'm going to cut it right here on the stack before I take it up there. I can put the saw in the bucket in case I need it, but I shouldn't need it. But then I'm going to dump all the sawdust off down here. I don't want any sawdust on there. The other thing I'm going to do, since this is going the other way, not the whole way, but about 2 feet over, I'm going to snap lines at 16 and 32 to mark it for me. There, now that is ready to go up. So I got forks on the backhoe, and I got a whole stack of stuff up here on the forks. I like to keep a good solid stack on there. For one, it gets me a little taller higher up, and two, it just makes it more stable for the stack to hop on and off. But this side's actually a little taller than the other side, so it's a little easier anyway. These are my Acrobus leather tool bags I showed you before. Really like these things. I took everything out that I didn't need for up here, all the extra weight. There's always plenty of weight when you're up here. So I'm going to set up, this is a little bit different than the other side. The other side was right-handed, I believe, and I think this is going to be left-handed for me. But I think what I'm going to do is set the nailer up here somewhere where it's not right in the way. What I like to do for this first sheet is I like to stand back here. I like to pull it up and get it in place. Then I got a mark here where I'm going to start. This truss is actually right in place. We're going to go with that truss. These sheets tend to run a 1/16 long, so I gain a quarter by the time I get over there in 4 sheets. So I'm going to start back from center just a fuzz, but I am going to space these, every one of these. I'm spacing the leading edge as I go, the top edge, to make sure that the truss is straight. So what I do is go out here on the stack. That's what's really handy about having the stack right here. Now again, I would tell you to not to do any of this if you don't feel comfortable doing it. So this first one's always the hardest one. And the first row, getting the first row started. Now I got to pull this right up to my chalk line. That's looking beautiful. I like using ring shank for these because they just hold so good. Now, next sheet. Now I like to stand kind of one bay off of the middle, because that way I can keep track of most of the sheet, but I can still reach to the end. Now the most important thing is to get this corner started and nailed in place. As long as you measure off the sheet, you can mark your centers. And I could do that down on the stack if I want to. But I don't worry about the bottom. Bottom can't really go anywhere. Got to make sure this is on the line. So you want to center all those trusses, pull it where it needs to go. You can see I'm right on my straight mark there. Now I'll go back to this edge. So that's how I'm going to go all the way across. All right, guys, I got that row on and it is beauty. I love it. Love how it came out. So since this is a little steep, it's an 8/12 pitch, I like to put this stuff on next so it gives me grip to walk on the next row. This stuff is pretty good, depends what boots you wear. I have these guys. These are Keens actually, and they're really quite grippy. They work a lot better than some of my other shoes, so I've been wearing them for better grip. But I'm also going to put this on as I go. I know a lot of people run the sheeting, then they run this, and I was talking it over with my wife one night, and she was wondering what order I do things. You know, talking it over sometimes helps you out. I said, hey, that's a great idea. I'm going to do, now that I got one row of this on, I'm going to do one row of this. So I did that on the other side. Every row of plywood I put down, put a row of this down, and it worked beautiful. What I like to do is let it run wild a little bit, make sure that it's long enough. So I have the extension ladder here, which is pretty much going to come right down to that. And then I'm going to let this run wild. Then I have this other ladder set up beside me. Make sure this runs long. I'm going to go right with the plywood. That keeps me nice and straight. Now I know they recommend this to put cap nails on. See how they got it all marked out? But I don't like to put cap nails down since I'm putting a steel roof down because it'll make humps and bumps under your steel roof. So I put staples in and I like to staple them in. If I see one that's sticking up a little, I make sure to hammer it in because I don't want anything sticking up under my metal. So if you're doing shingles, it's not as big of a deal. And you could probably cap nail it too. And also I'm not planning to leave this on here for very long. I'm planning to get my steel roof on soon. So cap nailing, I think you can leave it for 6 months or something if it's cap nailed properly. I really like this stuff. It's heavy duty. It's got some grip to walk on. It's a lot thicker. It's 25 mil, I think. A lot thicker than some of the other brands. I make sure to staple the top heavy since I'm going to be walking on there, and the top is one of the most important things for this. So here's another thing. I like to not staple below this line when I'm putting this bottom row on because I got to tuck my drip edge under there. So I just made it harder for myself. I can pull these loose. They pull pretty hard. But when I go to do it, I'll just have to do it. So I have to remember, mental note, staple above this line for the bottom. And in case it's going to be a little, till I get the steel on, don't want that edge peeling up. This stuff is surprisingly strong though. And the other nice thing is these rolls pretty much sit right there, even with all this banging around, even on an 8/12 pitch. They pretty much just sit right there. Overall, I really like this DeWalt carbon fiber stapler. It's really lightweight. I'll include a link down in the video description below the video if you want to check it out. But it is a lot better, I think, than the typical just normal Stanley one. So overall, I've been really happy with it. Especially, I lubed it up with WD-40 and it's been working great. It's very consistent in how it drives. Okay, so that's just to show you how I'm running that. I try to run it as wrinkle-free as possible. It's not always easy. That'll get a little better when I do the next run there. For this first run, I do it all off ladders, so that way I can see this edge. I feel safer. I could do it probably from the top edge, but I like being down here and doing it that way. So you can experiment and see how you want to do it. I got the titanium down for that run, all the way across. Now I'm ready to go on for the next run. Now this time I'm going to put the marks on the stack here. I think it's just a little bit easier. Since my first run of titanium is the same width as plywood, it makes it hard to see my previous run. So I'm going to mark the bottom as well. 246 just marks the centers. So each time when I do this, I have to figure out what's going to work the best. Usually what I found is just grab it. And I like to keep lots of plywood on the stack so it gives me lots of traction. Now this plywood in particular, I have about 7 sheets of this and it's a little more bowed than the other stuff. So it's going to give me a little more fits getting it on there. Now this time I'm starting in the center, working both ways. So I can pretty much center up my stuff. So I kind of check both sides. I'm not doing H-clips. I don't need to do H-clips here where I live. But I am still spacing it just for expansion and whatnot. If you use the 8-penny nail, that spaces it just a little bit like that. About an eighth, a little less than an eighth. Same for there. Now I just saved that nail in my bags. Since I marked the bottom, I know right where to nail now. I'm going to go get the middle since it's kind of bowed. Get these all spaced.
All right, guys, well, that is the end of the footage for doing the roof sheeting. I ended up just finishing this side out just like the other. So be on the lookout for the next video coming up. I'm going to be doing the steel roofing on this place. It's going to be a little bit of a lengthy video, but hopefully I'll get that together soon. So as always, I appreciate the support, and thanks for watching, guys.